Well, hello everyone. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
Good.
Are you guys excited about today?
Yes.
I am so excited because when last year was amazing, and I know this year is going to be even more amazing. Well, before we get started, my name is Latasha Wilson, and I am the owner of Cardio Fitness and also the co-creator of Hip Hop Hits. I'm also the chair for the Black Advisory Business Council. And as I said, I'm excited to have you two here. But a little housekeeping things before we get started. First off, we are here to celebrate for Women's Heritage Month, and we are going to celebrate by women by. Let me start that over. A little nervous. We're here for Heritage Moments conversation as we celebrate women driving change by enriching communities. We will have time at the end of the discussion for people to ask questions. So if you are joining us on Zoom, we ask that you stay muted, and you will be called upon to ask questions if you have. I know I'm going to have a ton of questions, and so I just can't wait for that. But now I'm going to turn it over to the moderator, Kimberly Moreland of Moreland Resource Consulting.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to everybody in the room and those on Zoom. I'm Kim Moreland, and owner of Moreland Resource Consulting, a member of the Black Advisory Business Council and president of the Oregon Black Pioneers. Today, we are going to honor some amazing women and host a discussion that promises to be both enlightening and inspirational. We're going to feature our esteemed panelists, Reeba Daniel and Nancy E. Thomas, and we look forward to an engaging conversation. So, and surely will enrich. You'll be enriched by today's conversation. Reeba is the founder of Keep Growing Seeds, an innovative agriculture and education initiative in Washington County and Portland, Oregon metro area. Starting with herb gardening, Reeba has expanded her work to include farm-to-school programs, culinary arts education, and community wellness events. Reeba's passion lies in fostering community autonomy and celebrating cultural diversity through sustainable food systems. And our next wonderful guest is Nancy E. Thomas. She brings a wealth of experience from her roles in contract management, legal consultancy, and diversity advocacy. With a jurisprudence doctorate, I was practicing at home, but a JD and a commitment to operational excellence, Nancy has made significant impact at the organizations like Oregon Department of Human Services and GE Aviation. Her work on the Hillsborough School District Board of Directors and various diversity councils underscore her dedication to creating inclusive environments and empowering communities. And I believe you're the first African-American board member? Amen. That's awesome. Both of our panelists stand as beacons of leadership and change, and we're eager to dive into this conversation and gain their insight. So let's start with Reeba. Can you please share your journey and how you arrived at this point in your professional and personal life?
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Reeba Daniel, they and she pronouns. I'd like to start, if we're going to start going to the way back. I am first generation Caribbean American. Here, my parents are from Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados and Grenada area. And so with that, my mom brought along her recipes, and those recipes very quickly growing in rural Ohio set me apart in the cultural foods that were grown and created there. And so from the very beginning, trying to bring my cultural foods to school and having them be ostracized, why is your food green, or why does it smell like that? And it always touched me throughout. And then, our overall African diasporic journey to this country and how, we brought our resiliency with it, I feel is exactly what our foods represent. And how can I create a cultural bridge to where that ostracism no longer exists? And so I first started working with adults and realized very quickly that students were receptive. They were already eating these different types of foods, and it was easier to create that cultural bridge.
Now, what part of Ohio are you from? I'm from Cleveland.
A very, very small town called Orrville, Ohio, which you do? Oh, that is so rare. Definitely more cows than humans, but it taught me a lot. And being surrounded by ag and yet not having accessibility to land has also really struck with me throughout this. So yeah, I'm sitting here right now. I am the current chair for the Farmers Market Fund and also serve as the Washington County Education Hub for Oregon Farmer School and School Garden Network, which allows me to provide technical assistance to schools to create school gardens and education.
That's amazing. Amazing. Well, now, thank you, Reeba. Now, Nancy, please share your journey and how you arrived at this point in your professional and personal life.
I'm not sure we have enough time to talk about all of that, but I will say that I don't think it falls deaf on me that there are 3 of us that have lived in and or from Ohio, Orrville, Cleveland, and we moved from Cincinnati 8 years ago to the Pacific Northwest. So
college in the University of Cincinnati.
And she went to UC. So there you go. I think that's really cool. My journey is not a straight one, as I think most careers are. Having been born in the U.S. military, the Marine Corps, my dad is a right-wing Marine, and even though he's now retired, he still gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and does his thing as if he's still in. Hoorah. So I then ended up marrying a man whose dad was also in the Marine. So I don't know what it is, but it is. I just recall those days when I thought I wanted to join the Marine Corps. My dad said, absolutely not my daughter. And there we go. So I had to take a different pathway. In short, I went to law school. After undergrad, I was able to take benefit or derive great benefit from being a very high-performing athlete. And I was able to run track and field, Division I, NCAA, and was blessed with a full scholarship to Drake University, home of the Drake Relays, if you know anything about track and field, which is only second to what goes on down at Eugene. So coming to the Pacific Northwest, this is like Mecca for track and field. And so I was able to go down and look at the field. And I actually was able to volunteer when I first moved here for the World Games, and so I was able to fulfill a dream of mine. So thank you to Oregon for being able to fulfill that dream of mine as well. I didn't make the big team, the Olympic team, but I have a few records still out there, and I just had a good time, and it gave me a great experience. And from there, I lived abroad a little bit, and like any other kid coming out of college, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but then decided that law school was eventually where I wanted to be after I had lived in Japan, and came back and to go to law school, and that opened up doors for me, and I just keep opening up the doors that open for me, and I've enjoyed it immensely. And what I think I found, how I got here next to you beautiful women, is that law school opens doors. These days, people have traditional and non-traditional ways that they can go once they go to law school. Some people don't take the bar exam, some people do. But it's an awesome thing to know that you are in possession of the ability to help others. And that's what it is. It's really about the ability to help others and then to open doors for other people in the community. So that's how I got here. I've done a lot of different things behind that threshold of having that JD. everything has been fun. I got to play with aircraft engines. I'm a bit of a geek. I'm not an official engineer, but man, I loved my time, my 10 years with GE Aviation and the engines and all the things. And I could, marvel you with all the data points, and I just love it. And now I've come here. I left that big place to come to another technical company, but they didn't want me. So we moved here, we thought everything was great, and we lasted about 6 months together, and they were like, okay, we don't like you anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. So I looked at my husband and I said, what do we do? Are we gonna stay? And he said, I kind of like it here. And I said, I do too. And I said, we're about 45 minutes from the ocean. We're 75 minutes from Mount Hood. I'd never lived this close to a mountain before. And then we also talked about how the land is blessed here. The presence of the Native American Indian is just overwhelming because y'all can grow anything. And so we thought that was cool, and we said, we're gonna stay.
Have to shovel snow.
That's right. Well, yeah, we thought about that as the 6 inches came. Right. I do recall being in the corporate housing in the hotel when we had to shut everything down, and they had to send the snow plows down from Seattle to dig out the city. So there you go.
So would you say, well, first I'm gonna sneak in a little fact that I know about Nancy. She's also a champion dragon boat racer. Traveled to Russia. Is that-
Hungary in 2018. Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah, your husband boasts a lot about his beautiful wife. So I always admire you so much. And so would you say your ultimate goal is to help others? And because one of my questions for you, Nancy, is how do you envision your achievements impacting your ultimate goals and driving transformative change?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think that Reeba has a passion for the earth and to grow. My passion is with people to grow. So what you do to the earth and in growing, I do to people to help them to grow. And my father taught me that. My grandmother and grandfather taught me that. My parents taught me that. And so as a servant leader, and that's what I consider my strongest leadership skill to be in servant leadership, that's really what it is. It's about bringing up other people around you. It's about empowering other people to do and believe in themselves in ways that, quite frankly, sometimes they just don't get that on their own. So I really feel that that's really what my calling has been at every position, at every company, at every time frame and position in my life. The question is, who are you to touch? Who are you to bless? How do you do that? And then what do you leave them with when you walk away? So that's how I live that.
People don't remember what you say, but they remember how you treat them. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'm going to ask you the same thing, Reeba. How do you envision your achievements impacting your ultimate goals and driving transformative change?
That brings me back to really when folks ask me the reason why I started this in the first place is when I became a parent and was raising a daughter, I wanted to raise her in a way that she never had to degrade, demean herself, or make herself small in order for her to live a life to where she felt safe and where she could thrive. And when I think about all the other little girls and all the other children who are growing right now, I think we are at a instrumental time in being able to change how we treat the environment, how we treat each other. And I also feel like my legacy or my achievements are ongoing. But my hope and goal is that at the end of my journey, when I become an ancestor, that I provided autonomy for our communities, for food, for sovereignty, for our people and the world.
Beautiful, beautiful answers, ladies. Reba, this may kind of address what you just spoke about, but can you discuss the significance of your work in creating culturally affirming food systems and its impact on addressing food scarcity in Black communities?
Yeah. I started Keep Growing Seeds and growing food. I've grown it for a really long time, a small herb garden. I very much believe you can grow anywhere. You have a windowsill, anyone can be a grower. And
Not all of us do.
no, right. You gotta give it a little light and some water and stuff. There's some other things, but
Not all of us do.
everyone has access.
Well put, well put.
To being able to grow and how tied that is to our liberation and our sovereignty, and how we saw during the pandemic how quickly we could be impacted by a lack of accessibility to food, and really how far it had to come in order for people to be fed. We live in a beautiful place, abundant, some of the best soil on the planet. And you know how I tell our kids it takes 400, 500 plus years just to create like naturally good soil. And so we have one of the most powerful and one of the most needed natural resources right here underneath our feet that again were stewarded by the indigenous ancestors, and we have a responsibility to continue to take care of that land.
Beautiful.
Yes,
Sorry about that.
absolutely. I still
Um,
can't grow anything, but absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. A question for you, Nancy. Share your motivation behind your candidacy for the Hillsborough School Board and the changes you aim to achieve, especially in the context of your experiences in Oregon.
That's a very good question. I believe, honestly, my motivation for the school board came as I was a founding member of the what we call the Black Village. That's what we named the parent advisory group for Black and African American children. So we created the Black Village, named it accordingly, and then suddenly we said, what's the next step? Until then, there had been no one that looked like the three of us on the board. And the question then became, well, can we do this? Can we put forth a candidate that one is willing and or can be involved in this? And I would be remiss if I told you that I was not frightened. Someone said to me, in short, I was going to have to raise $10,000. I was going to have to get 10,000 votes, and then I would probably win. And I told my husband, I said, well, then I guess that means I'm not going to do it. We know no one. We have nothing here. At that point, we had each other, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to dump 10 grand of our savings into it. I mean, there was all the things, right? And then eventually, God kind of sat me down and said, okay, now that you've had your moment, are you done? You've had the freak out. Good. Okay. Now do what I tell you to do and run. And that's what I did. And I was able to raise the $10,000. I was able to get over 10,000 votes. And although that particular race, in fact, I understand that that was the closest school board race that they have had in like many, many decades. I did not win by 10,000 votes, but I won first time out, and it was hard. It was uncomfortable. The moments when we were in people's neighborhoods and I had my ID on me because I knew somebody was going to call the police on me. It was all of those things that I had to think about. I had to think about my son. I had to think about my husband and how this was going to impact him. So in the end, the decision was that my fear did not override the fact that I needed to do this, right? So courage is not the absence of fear, but rather it's the decision that something else is simply more important. So that's what I took with me. And I just said, it's more important that we have voices like us. And by the way, truth is, I am not the only one. There is another African American on the board. They just don't identify the way I do. They weren't on the Black Village, and that's okay. So yes, I'm sort of the first. I would have to say I'm
But
technically
you both
not.
elected at the same time?
We were elected in the same election.
Okay.
However, my race didn't get certified until 6 weeks later.
Okay.
I don't know if you all recall that, but it was very, very, very close. And so there was lots of questions. And so we didn't get certified for that race until 6 to 8 weeks later.
You said some really wonderful things. And one of them is that courage is not the absence of fear. And I think we really need to understand that when you have a higher goal, you do things with shaky knees.
Mhm.
But when you're called to do it, and I'm sure everybody in this room knows that,
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And it doesn't matter, whether it was a close call, you obeyed and now you're here and making an impact.
Yeah.
And so it's just,
I will admit to you though, I didn't have all the goals. I didn't know if I wanted to reduce class size, because you hear that in a political way. People tell you, oh, I want to reduce class. I want to do this and I want to do that. I want to raise the salaries of the teachers. I knew enough to know that you really can't accomplish those things. I knew enough to know that I had to manage my expectations. So the most that I was looking for was to have a seat at the table so that I could represent the children who looked like myself, and that they would have someone at that table who was thinking of them. That's the only thing that I could do.
And since we do have a little bit of time, because we're kind of ahead of ourselves, I want to ask you, are there any tangible outcomes from that you feel that, or a legacy that you have left?
Well, yes, I can say that there are two things that I'm really, really proud of from my time on the board this particular session. One is that I was able to be the liaison or the representative from the board on our strategic plan, our current strategic plan. We spent a lot of time working on that strategic plan. The strategic plan gets done every 3 to 4 years or so. And it's really, 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 really important for the school district to know where they're going, how they're going to get there, and how you're going to measure it, right? So you have a child, and I did not ask, I apologize, what grade they're in? Second. That's elementary school. There is a ton of work that we have to do on doing a lot of things for our elementary school kiddos. And because we love them, we have to take the time, a significant amount of time, to come up with the strategic plan for the district. So that is done. So I was very, very proud of that. And then I guess the other thing that I'm proud of on the board is that we were able to elect the next superintendent. That is the number one priority and the number one responsibility of any school board, is to elect and to evaluate the superintendent of the district. In this case, we had a long time experienced, tenured, and phenomenal school superintendent in Mike Scott. And then when he decided to retire, then it was our job to pick another one. And so.
And those are two major accomplishments that's going to have lifelong impact on the district.
Agree.
I have a question for both of you, and starting with Reeba. What advice would you offer to emerging Black women leaders based on your extensive experience?
Before I answer that, one of my accessibility needs is ADHD, and I realized in the previous question when I answered it, I'd love to share about how my work impacts the Black community and also farmers. And so, so especially like for the food scarcity, us learning and being empowered to learn how to be able to grow our own food has been hugely impactful, doing different convenings where we're bringing community members together so that they can be able to get those starts. I've seen it beautifully happen just in the classroom where we are, everyone is sitting around and they're talking about what culture that they have, or going home and asking their parents, and then being able to share in a group or share their foods from their culture has just not only been beautiful in how it has bridged cultural connections and insights into how someone else is and believes, but it also allows those students to then go home and be able to also practice and eat those foods and to introduce them at home. So
Absolutely.
you've seen a lot of beauty happen there. And when I purchase my starts, a lot of the times I am purchasing them from Black farmers and BIPOC farmers. And so and then when those seeds are created after they're in the garden is then that return back to the original seed keepers so that we can continue and then also the legacy, we build school gardens. And so I'm starting in Hillsborough School District, but my ultimate goal is all of Washington County to have access to a school garden and school garden education that is culturally relevant. Because when you look at the numbers, surprisingly enough, it's neck and neck as to the Latinx population and the white population that we have in Hillsborough. So how do we find that reflected in the foods that we are feeding our children at school, the different kind of activities that they have access to, and how do we make that more equitable?
And we do consider ourselves a majority minority district. Absolutely.
Oh, can you explain that a little bit more?
Because we have over 50%
Okay.
children that are non-white.
Wow.
So, and we're very, 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 very proud of that. But that's part of what that is. That's the reflection of the food and the people. And I learned something, and I'm sure you know that not everybody's from Mexico. I learned something about the difference between the people from Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua. I mean, we came here and I just went, whoa, a whole world opened up from this little bitty tiny place in Washington County, Oregon, which still just blows my mind. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those insights. And can you talk a little bit more about the Black farmers movement in Oregon?
Yes.
It's just amazing to watch.
It's beautiful.
Are they landowners? Are they leasing the land?
Mudbone grown are landowners, Black food sovereignty. There are a lot of other smaller entities and farmers who are either doing it in their front yards or doing it in collaboration with others. And so finally, I see the farm to school movement actually getting the dollars to do the actual work. And I think it's time that we also, as the Black and African diaspora, have the opportunity to be able to fulfill those roles that is our birthright, is ingrained in our DNA. There's a reason why we are the master seed keepers. And so
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we
It's
grow grapes
empowerment.
too.
Yeah, we grow everything.
Yes.
We grow everything.
I think
So
my father, who grew up in rural South, and half of our backyard was a garden.
mhm.
So we grew everything, tomatoes. I didn't even know we never bought veggies from the grocery store because he always, grew them in the backyard. We had fruit trees and, pears, cherries, apples, it was grapes, so I think that African diaspora is true, and we kind of lost that a little bit, and it's amazing to see that happening again. So what, going back to my second question.
Yes.
And thank you for
Yes.
sharing, that's amazing information. What advice would you offer to emerging Black women leaders based on your extensive experience?
Protect your IP. It is again, our own personal resources. It is one of our most valuable, and it's because we have a unique perspective. I can speak for myself. My family always made sure that we had, but it was with ingenuity to how it got there. And so I see things, big problems, and how to provide change from like the simplest things needed in order for it to be. And I think that's a rare value to bring to the table. So number one, watch who you share it with, make sure that you have NDAs, make sure that you're speaking with an attorney. Not everybody is your friend. With ADHD, I think everybody's my friend, and it's just not the case. Too many times I have poured out my heart and have someone take my very dear
Yes.
ideas and create their own, and not even paying homage to the fact or credit where it came from. And yeah, and when I think about that, it's not just taking away my legacy, but also taking away my daughter's legacy, our girls' legacy, our people's legacy when something like that happens. And in that, also creating a strong network of people who are your ultimate fans. I started out my business actually creating CBD skincare and creating wellness events. I wanted to support small businesses and them, either in marketing or having a place where you could be able to create your products and also take care of your whole self, which is something that we dabble with, but self-care is like the pivotal, like the foundation of where we should be coming from before we step out into the world. It's how we show up as our best selves. And so just how I could create spaces to support that. And with that, sometimes I didn't do a great job. Sometimes I actually really made people upset. Very rare, but it didn't happen. And it's like taking my ego out of it to where ultimately this is about, yes, my love and my passion, but having the space to where community felt safe to be able to provide that so that it can make me be a better person so that I can show up for community better. So that lovingly being held in accountability, and having folks that like care about you so much to be like, yeah, maybe not that, or try to be able to guide you in that way. I'd say those are probably my top three things. And then we live in such a unique time that if you have the opportunity to live your passion, no matter how small, that you think this side hustle is, do something that fills you. Like if you have to go 9 to 5, like that's fine. We all got to make sure our bills are paid. And it's harder and harder when you look at what the cost of living prices are here. And so do something you love.
You guys heard it. Protect your IT.
Yes.
Surround yourself with fans and self-care. Yeah. And so, Ms. Nancy, what advice would you offer to emerging Black women leaders based on your extensive experience?
All of that. Plus, I'm going to say it again, and I say it to leadership classes that I teach at, women's groups that I talk to. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is simply the decision that something else is more important. When you can embrace that, when you can look in the mirror and say it, and believe it, and walk into your job and know it, and walk into your life and know it, and walk through your life and know it, it makes everything else much easier. We, as Black women, we have the responsibility of setting the example for so many people and carrying so many things on our backs. And yet people think we do it without fear. That is absolutely not true. The existence of the fear is the confirmation that you are human. We are divine. We are designed like this. However, self-care, guilty.
We all are.
I'm admitting it. And I thank you for bringing that forward, because there is nothing more irritating than when we talk to staff, and I've got 1,000 staff, 8 branches, all the things, 3 different programs, and we keep telling these people self-care. When are they supposed to do that? How are they supposed to do that? And why would they do that when we're asking them to do things that we don't want to do ourselves, right? To stay open during the pandemic was absolutely maddening, but we did it. And yet we wanted to talk about self-care. So I pick and choose when we talk about self-care. And I tend to, don't get mad at me, but I tend to be really, really forceful. Are you serious? Do you really want us to talk about self-care or not? And if you do, then give me the resources to do it. But if you're not going to provide the resources and the time to do it, then
Mhm.
move on. And so my advice to emerging leaders is know when the conversation is authentic and know when it is not.
Mhm. Mhm.
It doesn't matter the topic that you're talking about.
Mhm.
You have to have the discernment to know if the conversation is authentic or not. And if it's not authentic, then do not engage and do not waste your emotional capacity. I'm learning that, and that's really, really hard. Sometimes that means you have to let people fail around you, in front of you, beside you. But if it's not yours to control, piece of advice number 3, let it go. And I'm saying that to myself. It's so hard, but it's true. And I'm starting to change even at my job when I can tell other staff, I understand how you feel. Thank you for sharing that with me, but allow me to give you the empowerment to let it go because we don't control that. Or I say, that's not under my responsibility, therefore it's not yours. So I struggle sometimes. I wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I get the call, the alarm has gone off at this place or that place. And it's like, well, what do? Do you get angry? No. I get real, maybe, let's just say I get really, how do I want to call it? I get real persnickety. So I'll just say that. And what I do is I simply say, which alarm, give the police my phone number. If they find evidence of entry, give me a call. And then all of a sudden I realized that, okay, now I can go back to sleep. At first it wasn't like that because I thought I had to do all the things and get up and drive to Gresham and drive to Multnomah County, drive wherever, right? Wherever that branch is. And now I don't do that. Did the alarm go off? Yeah. Is the building on fire? Nope. We're doing good. If the building is on fire, call the police, call the fire department. So the word to the emerging leaders is understand what you control. We statistically only control about 50% of what happens around us anyway. So if you only control 50%, then you got to be impeccable for your 50%. But you can't obsess about everybody else's 50% because you don't control it. And I'm trying to plan my 60th birthday, and I'm just now learning that. But it's so important.
It is. I resonate with so much what you said, and I said it earlier about the courage. It's not the absence of fear, but it's really like focusing on the bigger goal, the bigger vision, and what you want to do. And I think many people in the D&I space, they can really relate to authentic conversations or not. Are you going to really do this D&I thing? Are you going to give me the resources that's needed to really create transformative change? Or if not, I'm not going to waste my energy and time, And I just love, what you say about you can know your limits, if you can't control it. I think a lot of moms and parents and women who, carry so many burdens that we want to put out all the fires, but we have to get to a point where we got to know our control, which is self-care. Because I think a lot of heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, it's all related to stress. And as a breast cancer survivor, I know that mine was the result of a lot of stress.
Absolutely.
Of being a mom of 4 kids in a toxic workplace and the things.
All of that.
All
Right.
the things.
All of that. All the things.
So,
all the things. And it's interesting because we have to get to the point. Who was it that said that self-care is no longer an option?
Right.
It's also not in the absence of community. So it is important that we are held in our self-care to have that practice. It shouldn't just be going to your bathtub and having a bath. That's great. But at the same time, like, it's also standing up for yourself in that workplace. It's having the autonomy over whatever it is to where you're spending most of your time doing that. That is also forms of self-care.
And honoring yourself.
Self-worth.
And knowing when to leave.
Yes.
And say, this place does not honor me, so I'm out, you know.
High five.
But, and really finding a place where your gift, talents, and skills can be, you know, elevated and respected.
Absolutely. And I know that you're talking to us, but I'm going to say this to you, Kimberly. I saw you, I watched you go through purgatory. It was not easy to watch it. It wasn't easy for my husband to watch you have to go through this. My husband and Kimberly used to work together. And without naming names and places, it was a toxic work environment for both of them. And Kimberly said, I'm done. I'm through. And I called her and I said, congratulations. Now go do what it is that you want to do. She didn't look back. She didn't think twice. And here she is, consultant agency, doing your thing. You're thriving because you took the self-care to walk out and say, I appreciate you for the job, appreciate you for the paycheck, but it's not worth it anymore.
And it was nice paying. But thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to ask you, how can we support you in your endeavors? And I'll start with you, Reeba.
Me? Okay. I think for Keep Growing Seeds, and that we also just newly formed a nonprofit, Keep Growing Dreams. For Keep Growing Dreams, I'm looking for board members, folks that are interested in volunteering to do classes. We want to make sure that the kids feel immersed in their community, so they're learning from their community members, connecting with people who make value-added products that want to test or have, you know, the kids test their products, but also getting exposure to the culture. I would love more connections with districts so that I can be able to get into more schools to get these contracts so I can start hiring people and not doing it all myself. And so that's, yeah, grant and foundation opportunities are.
So you guys on Zoom and in the room, you heard her request for board members and Miss Nancy. Connected. But if,
You got one more hour in the month.
I was just thinking about that. I don't know, from my perspective, the biggest ask that I have is really on behalf of the community of children that we serve. And I mean that when I say children. I am not talking about Black children. I am not talking about white children. I am not talking about Latina children. I am talking about children, all of them. They don't all look like us. They don't all talk like us. They don't all eat like all of us. But they are our future. And it is my job, I feel, on the board to make sure that they get the chance to grow up and make the decisions that they need to make. It is not my job to tell them how to feel, what to call themselves, what pronouns to use. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that they have an environment where they can grow up, they can meet a certain criteria of education so that then they can become full and productive adults and make decisions for themselves. The best way that you can do that is to make sure that there is not a school, there is not a vote that passes you without your participation. There should never be a child in your life that doesn't know that you love and care for them. And that comes from the personal side of, the professional side of me, working with child welfare and self-sufficiency. And it also intersects all the time with the board job in me. And it is a job. This is not a volunteer opportunity. This is not, I've had a lot of people say a lot of different things to me about what it is. It's a full-time job. And sometimes I fail. Sometimes I'm not where I'm supposed to be because I'm supposed to be someplace else, because you know what that's like. Like you said, you don't want to do it all by yourself. So I'm asking everyone in the room and on Zoom to support our children in this community. We always want this community to be the place where people want to raise their children. And that includes you don't let a levy pass you by. You always vote for a levy. And I learned that from my parents. I lived in 6 different states. My parents always, it didn't matter how little or how long we've been there. You vote for the levy because that means that's your taxes, that's your children, your neighborhood, and your schools. And how do they measure the success of a neighborhood? Taxes, schools, reputation.
Got that? And your term ends in 2025, and
That
I'm
is
not going to
correct.
ask you, but I'm just going to say, I hope you run again. I know we had that conversation before. And, but I do hope you run again and,
Thank you.
when your term ends. And so at this time, we're a little ahead of ourselves, but are there any questions from the audience or on Zoom?
It's like, I wish I had a pen to write down everything, but again, amazing answers. I am just so honored to be here in this room. Last week, I was actually back home in Alabama, and we had the opportunity to go to Selma and go to the bridge and stand there. And you talk about fear. As I walked across that bridge, realizing that they were going to be faced with opposition.
Mhm.
And so, but not giving up. They went back 3 times until they got it right.
Yes.
So my question to you is, what is that thing that you had to overcome that just seemed so hard, where you felt like, I want to give up, but I'm not going to give up and I'm going to keep on going?
I'll be authentic. I didn't pass the bar. Graduated last in my law school class. Even wrote a book about it. Just figured I would just, look, here's what I learned. What I learned was that statistically speaking, it is impossible for everybody to graduate at the top 10% of your class. Once I realized that, I went, oh, but you don't, when you're going in and you live in this little bubble where everybody is trying to be at the top, and the level of, you don't understand that even though you're in a class of maybe 100 people, that because you're number 100, you don't get that you're above the other 85,000 or 85 million people around the country. You don't understand that because of the bubble that you live in. So the best thing, the hardest thing I learned was to just simply not give up, but make the right decisions. I could have given up once I didn't pass the bar, but the question was, what does that really mean? What I realized, and thank you to God and the Spirit and the ancestors and my parents, what they told me was, what does this degree mean for you? My dad said, seriously, honey, you don't want to be a prosecutor. And I said, but Dad, they think I would be a great prosecutor. He said, you would, but you don't want to be. And I went, huh, good point. And he said, you could, I had people saying you would be a great defender, public defender. And I'm like, eh. And my dad said, is that what you really want to do? And I'm like, no, I hate criminals. Everybody's guilty. I had to be very honest, right? So when we're going through this, all I'm saying is that just because you don't achieve what you think you should achieve doesn't mean that you can't achieve. I would not trade my life for anybody in my graduating law school class, whether they were the top 10% or not, because I have had a measure of success that I know came because I believed in Nancy. June and Charles believed in Nancy. Marcus and Melanie, my siblings, believed in Nancy. So after that, what do I care about everybody else? So I was able to open doors for myself. So failure is not an option, but you've got to be able to define it. So I could have stopped when I didn't pass the bar. That would be a really easy place to stop. But I didn't. And here I am talking to you all.
Awesome. Similar situation with urban planning. I got a master's degree, but I couldn't pass that doggone comp plan exam. But I actually, God gave me a vision. It wasn't a dream, it was a vision of me in another space talking to women. And that was just confirmation that you don't need to pass. And eventually they got rid of that requirement because I was a practicing planner, but I couldn't pass a 4-hour exam. But I had such a rich career, that goes beyond the traditional urban planning behind the desk, looking at
Absolutely.
maps. But led me to historic preservation and
Absolutely.
history. And
Yeah.
so
The
it
traditional
was amazing.
the traditional pathways
Mhm.
that we set up for our kids, they don't exist anymore. And now they're saying that, and I'm just talking about law school because unfortunately that's what I know. And people are telling me, you can't come out and make 6 figures anymore. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So even if you are at the top 10% of the class, even if you are the valedictorian, congratulations. I had a sign with me that said, I'm a graduate. Somebody said to me, and this is what we were talking about, they said the day we're graduating, we're walking out, and one of my classmates, he was the valedictorian, he said to me, Nancy, if you are the bottom of our class, we are one hell of a class. And I'll never forget that. So, not bragging, just saying, I'll keep my career. I like my career. I like what I've done. I've done many, many different things. I've lived many different places, and I'll take this, and maybe somebody can help me learn how to grow some plants.
You got it.
And Reeba,
You got
how would you respond to Latasha's question?
I think the only race that I run is against myself. And so when again I'm done with this journey and I have become an ancestor, that I just hope that I'm able to make them proud. I am able to get over the traumas that existed for me to be sitting in this seat today, and how they were not me, but they helped me to create the mechanisms that I needed to overcome, which made me stronger in other situations. And so, yeah, I say the biggest hurdle would be me in realizing that, yeah, it's about the journey. I mean, yeah, I love the journey. I don't care about the destination. Like, I hope, I hope I have these foundations and these things that I'm able to create a legacy for. But at the end of the day, like when I take my last breath, I just want to be happy with the journey. Like, how did I show up for myself and my community?
That word.
That's powerful.
As
Yeah.
the kids say, that's the
That's
word. That
powerful.
word. But that's beautiful. Did you want to say anything else? Or?
We could sit here and talk all day, talking about the ancestors and
We have
talking
another-
about the way that
Yeah,
that's powerful. And that's,
powerful.
when we talk about ancestors, that's not a Black thing. That's a people thing,
Yeah.
right? We all came from someplace. I am proud to have the name of Nancy. There are not too many, you're not going to meet too many Black Nancys in your life.
Or Reeba.
Or Reeba, yes, you're right. But what I do know is that the woman whom I'm named after had 5 children. She died after the birth of the 5th child. And among those siblings that she left behind, they made a pact and said, whoever had the first female child, they would have mom's name.
Oh.
And that's how I became Nancy.
Love.
So, you know what? I'm gonna rock out Nancy. I'm gonna rock it out.
Any
by the
other
way,
questions from the audience or on Zoom? Do we have any questions on Zoom?
Yes, I think I got one. Okay, so earlier, Nancy, you mentioned law school opened doors for you.
Mhm.
I'm of the mindset where I believe being introduced to other cultures, going to different places, getting away from your hometown, which if I compare it to my hometown, I wasn't supposed to make it out.
Mhm.
But because of Sharon Wallace, I did. I am who I am because of her. And her big thing for me was education. But I realized too that children that are exposed to other cultures, other ethnicities,
Mhm.
can adjust anywhere that they travel in the world and can thrive. Do you feel, and Reeba, you can answer it too, do you think that's a thing as far as just being immersed in another culture, being able to go somewhere and see how people there are, to go to Italy, Greece, Mexico, and
Mhm.
things like that, and see how other people are around the world,
Mhm.
opens your mind and opens doors, because you realize where I'm from is just this small little
Yes.
speck on the map,
Yes.
and there's so much more of the world that I need to learn about. How do you feel about that? Do you agree with that? Do you believe that travel aspect, that being side by side with someone
Mhm.
different than you, makes you think different and
Absolutely.
opens open doors and opportunities?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And that's really what we bring to the table when you're talking, especially about young people and about what they're doing. The greatest gift my parents gave me was, one, having been born in the US Marine Corps, and then two, him leaving the Marine Corps and then following a corporate career where he was pummeled 30 years with the same company. And every time he'd hit a mark and he'd get a promotion, they would change the rules. And then he'd have to fight again. Who taught me that? My dad taught me that, right? So all the times we moved, and let's be clear, most of the time, well, every time we moved, there weren't people who looked like me in the schools. There weren't people who looked like me in my neighborhood, because my dad believed in A, I take my children to the best schools, B, I live in the best house I can afford. Those were the two things that he had. And that's what he gave us. And so when I say things like, you never go down the school levy, that's because he never did. They believed that that was part of the dream. But the point that you're making, Titonian, is that the exposure to all of the people, I have no fear of this world. This world is my playground. So when I can hop on a plane and my mom wants to know why I want to go work in Japan, for God's sake, and my answer was, Mom, why wouldn't I? My dad knew exactly what was going to happen, and he tried to prep her. Hey, she's not going to do the same things we did. She's going to do it her way. When I went to Drake University, which at that point was 14 hours away from where my family lived, it's going to be different. I was exposed. I mean, I was one of those kids that came up during the farm aid era, and I knew nothing about farms. But when I walked on to a real working for real corn farm, and if you've never been one, oh my God, it changed my life forever. Because I thought that farmers didn't know what to do. I didn't know, I don't know what I thought. But what I found out was that I was wrong. And once I was happy to be corrected and redirected, then the world opened up again. And so if I hadn't taken the chance and gone to Drake, then I wouldn't have met the Japanese woman who was my Japanese professor, who allowed me to try on her kimono. That's a big deal. So I learned all I could, and then I was looking for a way to get around. So it's about being everywhere in every place. And isn't it funny? Because I've never been to Mexico. Been around the world, never been to Mexico, but I'm getting there, right? And so here we are. I come to the Pacific Northwest. I'm old as dirt. and now what am I doing? I'm dragon boat racing. And where do we go in 2018? Hungary. Where are we getting ready to go this year? Italy. World Championships, right? Why would I want to do this to myself? Because I don't know anything else. But what I do know is that the world is my playground. And my parents told me that I can play with anybody I want to.
Reeba, you want to read?
Yeah. I feel if we do this again, like I should go first because yours is so like full. It's hard to follow up. I absolutely agree that exposure to different cultures, I mean, that's the basis and foundation of my companies, is collaboration with small businesses and how we can support each other in living our full selves, and that includes culture. I will say that coming from a very small town and originally Brooklyn, and I can remember like living in Brooklyn and smelling all the smells of all different types of cultures being in one building. And I had a mom where what she couldn't grow in, you know, a little patch that we, you know, of a place that we were renting. We were in the car driving 8.5 hours to go get some breadfruit and some blue crab to be able to make our cultural dishes, because it was that important for her to have like the authentic, or drill in Walmart to like make sure that they start to carry these kinds of ethnic foods. And so, but I also want to make a plug that a lot of people from around the world come to America because of how much like diasporically difference we have, like cultural differences in different, so I guess, and I've never been outside of the country, but I believe that I'm well traveled because I've been all over the United States. And so there is still that opportunity of you being able to have that cultural exchange and immersion and not even have to leave your own country to do that.
Well put.
I
Thank you.
totally agree with that. You know, as I watch my children, you know, connect with people from around the world at the various colleges, campuses, and embrace them for who they are and their culture. And you don't have to travel outside the country to get that insight.
Yeah, it could be at your local community center.
Yeah.
It could be, you know, I try to bring in folks from different cultures, like bringing them into the classroom and letting them actually like be immersed in, like, now that's my community member. And so, yeah.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Is there any questions on Zoom? No? Any other question in the room?
I am like just a sponge. I just want to know everything that's in your head, and I'm just trying to, you know, I'll ask the question. So if anybody else has a question, please ask. But one of my favorite questions to ask people, because maybe I can't be with you every single day or hear your entire story, but I can read what you read. So what book would you recommend that probably just changed your life? Like if there was one book that, you know, you would share, and we'll start with you, Miss Reeba.
Yes. So I will say that with my ADHD, it makes it very difficult for me to sit down and read a book, and like to stay along with it. I think the last one that really had impact for me is Dear God, It's Me, Margaret.
Yes, love it, love it.
Yes,
Yes.
and I feel like it's yeah, I just remember reading it at that time where, you know, like the woman, like that change, that bodily change and all of those things. And I just think there's so many parallels as you go through your life, that kind of just like that blooming again, that emergence of your femininity and what that means and how you show it. So I mean, I do read, but it's like, you know, an article here or there, but like that would be a book I thought really stuck with me.
I'm writing a book, and that's the prelude. That's the first line. Dear God, are you here? Is me, Margaret? So again, confirmation for me. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
What about you, Nancy? Okay.
Well, first of all, I encourage you to write the book. You don't need anybody's permission. Anybody can do it. If Nancy can do it, anybody can. I've written 3 of them. And here, let me just say this. The funniest thing for me is to get a deposit of $1.50 from Amazon, from royalties every quarter. Because somebody keeps buying my stuff. I'm not trying to, I do want to be New York Times bestseller and all that. At the right time and the place, maybe I will, but right now, just do it. You don't need anybody's permission. You can put it on Amazon yourself. You can do the whole thing yourself. If I can do it, anybody can. So just keep writing.
And your book that you, well, yeah, what are your books?
Honestly, there's a lot of them. And I say that tongue in cheek, but honestly, there's a lot of them. I would say, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
Who Moved My Cheese it freed me to understand what was happening to me professionally. And then I turned around and gave my son the book that was written by the author's son. And it is a child's version of Who Moved My Cheese? Because I was moving him, right? So it really did make it's a heart thing, right? And then of course, Shel Silverstein and The Giving Tree. Yeah. And then I guess after that, don't laugh. I am a Dr. Seuss, Theodore Geisel fan. And I still, to this day, will pull out something from all the places where we go. And that is my favorite, because you can find a piece of that story that fits your life, whether it's graduation, whether it's professional. It just rings to the soul of all the places that we can go.
I have you guys, I just love your answer and I want to read the book. Dear God, it's my good. I have a question for Reeba. If you want to travel outside of the US, where would you go?
Yeah.
All the things. If anyone listening wants to give me trips around the world to try all different types of foods, especially like home foods and street foods, I would also become an ancestor very happily after all of that. I would love to go to Western Africa, go to Nigeria, go to Ghana. Please, let's go. India, I would love to go to the Caribbean and really learn about our bush medicines and how,
Wow.
I always remember my mom saying, like if your stomach hurt, you just went out and you picked this leaf and you put this here and you made a tea or a decoction from it. And that's how we took care of ourselves. And so how do we get back to not just that land tending, but the tending of the seed of our ancestors?
I want to go with you. We got to make that happen for her. For everybody.
Sorry, idea popped in my head. Sorry, that was out loud. Sorry.
I can't wait for it.
I have a final question.
Oh, great. And Tali says final question.
I think I heard
Thank you
that.
all for being here today. My question is related to discomfort is a part of the Black experience, especially as a Black woman. We don't often get to celebrate our accomplishments because we have to prepare for the next moment, or we have to figure out how we can stay in that moment before someone takes it away from us. But when you celebrate, you're arrogant and you're there because someone put you there, not the hard work that you did. How do you navigate living in that space? Because as you all spoke, the Black experience is different all around. I look different, you look different, we're still Black people, but how do you navigate living in the space of, can I celebrate this, or do I just gotta keep pushing? One of the first things is surround yourself.
They're in context. And I won.
The very first thing is I surround myself with people who, like this amazing human right here, who doesn't matter how small a win, is always rooting for me, no matter what. Anytime I need uplifted, or hey, let's just take a second and go have lunch and like celebrate this part of your journey. And so slowing down and intentionality and showing up for yourself It is not easy. Surround yourself with other Black women who are doing the thing. Like, you need to make sure that you are creating yourself a network that you can be able to rely on your lowest day, that will pick you up. And also, like, just the wherewithal to where, like, this is my ancestors' journey. I am driven and guided towards this, you can say, this divine vision that I have in regards of how I can be able to support community. And there is no deterrence. There might be a meandering, but like what they have put into place, it is just my job to just be that vessel to making that happen. And so it's so hard, but just that fortitude of, like, you deserve to be there. You deserve to be in those spaces. You deserve to have respect, and we deserve to be working in spaces to where our opinions are what drives change. And if that's not the case, there are so many jobs out there. Do not stay in a place where you are not honored. Which is hard to do when you got to pay those bills. But I guarantee on the other side is this beautiful unfolding of you really knowing deep down, like, who you are at, like, and what you can accomplish. And I think that's what has taught me as an entrepreneur, despite the trauma, despite all those things, despite the ways my internal thinking wants to keep putting me down, and also living in racism, redlining, all of those things that are all those isms that still exist. Like, how do I have the fortitude within myself to still show up in those spaces? No, I might not be the only Black person there, which is often.
All the time.
All the time.
Celebrate yourself.
Yes,
And your accomplishments.
absolutely.
Number one.
Number one.
I will admit that I struggle with that, because being the daughter of a Marine, you don't celebrate the wins. You get ready for the next fight. That's what they do. You don't celebrate. You don't get to revel. You go to the next fight, period, end of story. And so I have lived a life of going from fight to fight to fight to fight, because that's all I know. And every now and then, especially a beautiful man over there that I'm married to, who has Jamaican and Indian, right, blood in his veins, will say, hey, you gotta, can you just stay there for a minute? And I go, oh, well, what did I miss? And he'll go, well, you just did XYZ. And I'm like, well, yeah, don't I have to go find A, B, and C because I'm at the end of the alphabet and I got to start all over again? And he's like, no, I need you to stay right here for a little bit. And so his superpower is the thing, his neurodivergency. So don't feel like you're by yourself, because you and he could probably have a conversation.
There's a lot of
But
us.
that helps. I mean, quite frankly, it's a struggle, but it's just something that you do. Drive for everybody comes from different places.
I would like to add to that too. On Sunday, I was at a party. It was celebrating the closing of the Black Artist exhibit at the Portland Art Museum. And on the dance floor was all these beautiful young Black artists. And it was so joyful. And it was a celebration. And for a woman of faith, I said, this is what the joy of the Lord looks like. And the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I think when we cease to embrace celebration, not to be joyful, we weaken ourselves, and I think we have to stop and celebrate the wins, celebrate those moments that your struggles have had not been in vain, that you're seeing the impact and the outcome of all your journey, So I think throughout the journey, you got to celebrate your wins, celebrate and have the joy of the Lord.
Can I ask from here, or I have to go?
Yep. Also, shout out to my partner as well. I should probably say he also helps me with this. But yeah.
Thank you for all you guys have said. It's very educative for me as a Nigerian. that owns a little business. My question may be a little controversial, but don't get me wrong. I think we are focusing on the culture that we are in. How do we close the gap between the American blacks and the Nigerian black and the Ghanaian black and other blacks? You know, I've been struggling with this when I go out there for business or when I'm having a conference or when I'm somewhere. How do I get myself involved in a community of the same color like me, that I'm not gonna be told, you have an accent? Is a big one for me when I started my business. I think I will stop there. It's a little controversial, like I said, but I just want.
I don't think that's controversial. That's
Okay,
life.
Okay, so, and another question I have for you, when you were talking, not passing the board, you were scaring me because my daughter is in Hampton. And she wants to be a lawyer. Do you think, do you know any information that even though you don't pass the bar in certain states, you can still practice? Because in Oregon, May 27th of this year, a bar
They
has
changed the
been
law. Uh-huh.
passed, the law.
I heard they did.
And in Washington, and people who didn't pass their bar and they're here, do you think they have a chance to practice? If no information now, you can let us know later. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I will say this.
Thank you.
Yes, the laws are changing. Prior to Washington and Oregon doing what they did, the only state in the union where you could practice without passing a bar was the state of California. You could go, at that point, you could go to a quote unquote there's a certain, it's an uncertified school. There's another word for it. I can't think of it right now, but anyway, you could go to one of those schools, you could actually pass that school, and then you could practice in the state of California only. And then recently, in the past 2 years, I think they have started to change that. They're starting to loosen that up. Does that mean that I want to practice here in the state of Oregon? Nah, no, thank you. I don't want to dump 3 years in studying, $10,000 in fees, books. No, I'm in a different part of my life now. There was a time where I may have jumped at that, but now, nah, no, thank you. I'm good. What I have done is given $150,000 worth of education to everybody I can think of. And I love doing that because I'm sharing with them something that they didn't know. And that's what I think my law degree was for, to pass it on to others for free. So you want to talk about I talk about it all the time at work. What is a legal gift? Do you know I had to explain to somebody, do you know that a gift is not a gift unless it is legally received? And I say that about the clients. If you have a client that's agitated and they show up and you can't give them that EBT card that they want so badly, then guess what? You have to send them on their way. Because you have a gift, a resource that they need. But if they're not ready to receive it, then it's not their time. All right, lights out and we're done.
Is it a section or something like that? Oh, there we go.
And we're back.
Yeah. Do you anyone want to respond to her question about how we can bridge that gap between African Americans, the Black Americans, and African,
Yeah, it's a
Black Africans?
it has deep roots, and ultimately us coming together and understanding that we're all part of the diaspora, and that really everyone on this planet, as far as science has told us so far, comes from Africa. It is our homeland, all of us. But it's hard to think about creating those healing spaces to where those really deep conversations can happen when there are folks from Africa, which are also splintered as well from even the same country, where you have different tribes that are fighting against each other or have left places where they would have otherwise been enemies. And so how do we create even those bridges to have those conversations? And also, try not to be political.
Just say it.
There are many reasons why the elites make a way for us to be splintered and fight against each other for resources, for all of those things, for representation. It behooves them to keep us separate. And so when you're talking about how do we create these spaces where the African diaspora can come together, have real conversations and feel respected, when you have to where there might be a faction in there that literally murdered, like this group of people may have literally murdered your people. And so how do we get beyond that? And I don't know. I know that as of right now, I am working with a small group, Unite Oregon, Blackmore Rise Healing Center, and Black and Economic, can't remember the rest, in Meyer Memorial Trust, but essentially, how do we create a Black healing space in East County where you can be able to take care of your physical self, but how are we also healing our community so that you do feel supported? The other thing I would say is in the meantime, supporting yourself around people who support you. I'll support you. I know there are plenty other small businesses and Black small businesses or minority small businesses that would empower you in that cultural difference and want to learn from you. And so I think it's also about who you're surrounding yourself around or wanting to get support. I think that this is not to make light, but I think one kind of like very far away parallel is when I first started my business, I was like, why is my family buying this stuff? Like, this is magic. Like, why are they not supporting me? Why are they not buying just like a $20 jar? And I realized like that's not their space to support me in. That's not that I needed to reach out to a broader network in order to be supported. And so that doesn't really answer it, but we're trying to find solutions. And I would love that if you want to be involved in those conversations, that you are involved in those conversations. And how do we get more people to the table? So we're having real conversation about how like we can support each other in this diaspora.
And I think we're going to end that in this discussion with that response. We are at time, and I just want to thank you, Reeba and Nancy, your wisdom, insight. I mean, I have so many little nuggets that I wrote down, and it's really been a delightful conversation. And thank you, audience, for engaging, asking questions.
Thank you.
And I hope you too enjoy the discussion. Let's give our panelists. We was hoping we'd have time to network, but we want to extend this. We want to open up this time for you guys to get to know each other, and we really are so thankful for Reeba and Nancy and your openness and valuable contributions. Was just amazing and unforgettable. And to you, our audience, thank you for engaging. Your questions, and let's continue to carry this energy and inspiration throughout our day, our month, throughout our lives. We see some really life wisdom and nuggets that we could take with us. And as we wrap up, we really want you guys to kind of get to know each other. And I also would like to express our gratitude for you on Zoom. And if any of you guys like this type of programming, we're always looking for sponsors. I'm looking at and our fearless leader over there. Thank you so much for your support of the Black Advisory Business Council. And we are always looking for sponsors for our future programming. And if you are a business owner, an African-American business owner in Washington County, we welcome you to join the Black Advisory Business Council. And please check out our website for more information. So thank you guys, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.